Hi, thanks for watching me work problem P8-30A. It's from page 476 in your textbook, and it goes over the allowance or indirect method of writing off bad debts. So we already learned the direct method. You just write it off to bad debt expense. But there was a problem with that because when we did that, you ended up sometimes could cross over financial statement years and expenses get messed up. So what this does is it allows you to take an expense up front, and then when you find out who's actually gonna go bad, then you can write them off to the allowance. All right, so this problem, 830A, is on page 476, and we're working for Delta Watches, and here is their transactions related to bad debt. All right, so starting off in 2018, at the end of the year, they sit down and they make this allowance that we've discussed. And I'll never make you calculate it. I'm just going to tell you it's $9,000. So let's put that allowance on the book so we have it to write things off against. So this is 12/31/18, and we take our bad debt expense, and I've told you it's $9,000, and now we set up our account. It's called Allowance for Bad Debt, $9,000. All right, so now that's set up, we're ready to go into 2019 and start doing transactions and write stuff off. And that's that. All right, so let's see here. Sold merchandise to Mac Smith, 400. We're not going to do this closing entry. Sold merchandise inventory to Mac Smith, 400 on account. Ignore cost of goods sold. Well, we're not going to ignore it. We're going to say cost of goods sold was $200. So it's just a sale, right? So on 1/17, right, we have account receivable Smith, and of course we have our sales revenue, and then we have cost of goods sold, and of course we reduce our merchandise inventory. So the sale amount was 400, and so that makes our sales revenue and account receivable 400. Cost of goods sold, I told you, was 200. All right, so there's the sale with our revenue and our expense. Just a regular sales transaction. All right, then the next thing that happens is we write off his account, right? He doesn't pay us, we call him, it's June, it's 6 months, holy cow, let's write that thing off. He's not going to pay us. So we got to get rid of this accounts receivable. So on 6/29, we go allowance for bad debt, and then we write off the account receivable Smith. All right, and how much? Well, he owes us 400, so we're going to write that whole thing off. And as you can see, the only thing that's really different at this point from the direct method is instead of writing it off to bad debt expense, we write it off to allowance for bad debt. That's really and truly the only difference. All right, on August 6th, we get a letter from Smith. It says, "Oh, here's your money. I'm sorry." All right, so great. We got the money back. Wonderful. That means it doesn't need to be written off, right? So we have to do that where we flip it and put it back on the books. So on August 6th, we go account receivable Smith, 400, allowance for bad debt, 400. Then we can put the payment on, and of course that's just we get the cash in, right? It's a payment. Pay for stuff with cash. So cash and account receivable. Smith, 400 and 400. All right. Excellent. Well, now we come down to the end of the year, and there's several people who haven't paid us, right? We've got Carter, Venture, and Reeves. So it says to do a compound interest. That means we just write them all off at once. So still just write off, still just allowance for bad debt, and each separate accounts receivable. So this is the last day of the year, right? So on 12/31, here we go, allowance for bad debt. I'm not sure how much it is. I guess I should add these all up. We've got Cam, 1,400, Mike, 1,200, so that's 2,600. And Russell Reeves, 400, so that's $3,000. All right, so we're writing off 3,000, and then we just do each one. Account receivable, Carter was 1,400. Account receivable, Venture is 1,200. And account receivable, Reeves is 400. All right, so there we go. They all add up to 3,000. We've written them off. Now it asks us, it's the end of the year again. So just like up here, we did that estimate, we're doing it again, just because you do it every year. So we're going to set up the allowance this time at 10,200. And it's the same transaction we did back up here on 12/31, this time 19. We do bad debt expense and allowance for bad debts. Excuse my abbreviating, but it's just easier. So we set up our allowance again, and I said, what was it, 10,200 and 10,200. And so that's it. We did it. And now we don't have that issue with things carrying over across financial statements. We just take our bad debt expense all at once at the end of the year. We did it in 2018 and we did it in 2019. And during the year, when we have to write stuff off, we just write it off to the allowance. All right. Thanks for watching the video. I appreciate it, and I'm glad you learned something today.